Hi, I'm just going to do a quick video. This is my Guillotine Treadle hammer that I made based off the concept by Coleson child. I just wanted to post this basically as a way to show a few changes that I made to the design. I'm not a YouTuber, and I just wanted to share some information in case people wanted to make copies of his machine with some ideas to tweak it out. Do so at your own risk. Blacksmithing's dangerous. Building this stuff is dangerous. Don't hurt yourselves. Just take some good ideas and do what you will with them. So the way I went with it, basically, on his he had on the rails the springs along the side. I moved my springs on center. That still gives me full center access to use, locking pins, whatever you want up here. Although I am just using a 3/8 inch screw to lock in my dies, which so far has been working. And if it continues to work, I will keep it. Basically, I'm just using two springs, one on each side, and then in the center there is a threaded rod. In the threaded rod, there's just a through hole here with two more nuts kind of hidden away inside here that rub up against a washer with some grease on it. And then the threaded rod goes up through and then threads through a welded connector up here. That is supported on my machine by these the single rod across the top, which are just slotted into this through gravity with a couple of 1 inch inside my 1 1/4 inch bars. Mine is a lot smaller than his machine as well. I wanted that because my shop is very congested with tools. Basically, I wanted to be able to take this whole thing apart and reuse something that I already had, which in this case is this 132-pound anvil, which I don't use very much anymore since I managed to pick up a vintage Brooks 308-pound anvil, which I really adore. Although I still need the sharp corners on this. So you actually get, almost full 360 access on this anvil, regardless of this machine being installed. And if I ever want to move this thing, it's actually on wheels. You just tilt it to one side so you can move it around your shop. And if you want to dismantle it, you just take out, you just undo some 17mm bolts here and there to basically the whole thing come into pieces without having to do much beyond that. It's really easy to tear it down. The way it works pretty much is just like his machine. You push up and down, push down on the foot levers. I move the chains to the side. You can adjust the height of the chains just by taking this pin out and running it through whatever height, whatever length you want to create the height that you want. The big thing, however, is that I am very lazy and I really like the idea of being able to adjust it without having to lift the entire head. So basically put any kind of 90-degree drive tool and bring it down like that. You can kind of see the foot lever moves with it, but it still keeps its calibration reasonably well. And turns it up. It's pretty easy like that. I'm going to eventually lubricate this screw. Right now it's just running dry, which is not the best thing in the world for it. In terms of tooling, basically I'm using the Hardy on the original anvil, which unfortunately is not square, so you can't put your tooling in both directions. I also wanted to be able to put any of the tooling that I made into my main anvil without having to fuss around, which was pretty easily achieved like this. Another thing I wanted to do is create a bunch of secondary tooling which could be used in both. So basically this Hardy is 1 1/4 inch, so I'm using 1 1/4 inch up here in this system. To remove it, I'm just going to drop this down so I'm not letting this fall too far. You just loosen the bolt and that pops right out. Put that back into the rack. One of the more creative ones that I created as accessories for this was I took this auto body tool for doing sheet metal work. It has a quick change mechanism. You push that button there and this rod pops right out. Comes with all these different patterns. So I wanted to pretty much make this into like a texturing tool. You could probably use it for light punch work, drift work, what have you. You just pop it into it, tighten the bolt down, and then you can just bring this up and down with really small, quick motions in order to texture very quickly. And I'm sure you could probably think of a million uses for that. But the main thing is that it just switches out by pushing that, and it basically just, if it doesn't stick, it drops right out. Other than that, pretty much, I think everything else is the same. It's a really nice, simple design. It took me like 2 days to build the machine itself. The tooling is actually taking longer than the machine itself. And I'm going to add a little face shield for here to avoid me getting smacked in the face if one of these springs ever pops on me. One thing I would recommend on mine, I went ahead with bolts to kind of reinforce the core of it. You don't really need that. I made it too tight of a tolerance. I only put in a couple of sheets of aluminum foil tape to create my gap. When I put the bolts into it, it actually kind of pinched it shut. So I added in these little extra spacers here with 20 gauge steel welded onto one edge of it just to kind of pop it out, which took care of my issue. But in my view, keeping it super tight tolerance with almost no play isn't needed for this design. I just kind of wanted it that way, and I somewhat regret it now because it's got a little bit fussy. But I mean, the drag on it is pretty non-existent. With a lightweight base, I will say it wobbles a bit, so I added this foot plate basically to kind of keep it from wandering around the shop. I'm going to add a couple of stabilizers in the back before I'm finished, just to keep it from moving during use. And there's probably a bunch of other little fit and finish things that I'll eventually do. So that's how I built mine. Feel free to pull any ideas off of mine that you would like.